In the village of Ajani, life seemed simple. Every market day, people traveled from far and near to buy oil. It was said that Ajani's oil carried a sweetness no other village could match. But one woman's oil stood above the rest, and so did her food. Her name was Erimma. Her soup was so delicious that crowds gathered at her stall every morning, and before noon, nothing was left. Her oil shone brighter, smelled richer, and tasted far different than anything sold in the market. People admired her, praised her, and wondered what secret made her work so special. But none could guess the truth. Erimma was loved by all. Parents pointed to her as an example of diligence and hard work. "Be like Erimma," they told their children. She led the moonlight plays, where children gathered to sing, dance, and hear stories under the silver glow of the moon. Her laughter carried through the square, her voice gentle as she told folk tales, and the little ones called her Mama Erimma. Parents felt safe leaving their children in her care. But when the moonlight faded and the children began to return home, a shadow stirred inside her. The woman who told stories, with a smile, was not the same woman who walked the paths afterward. Her eyes, once warm, gleamed coldly. Her smile curved differently, sharper, darker. She followed behind the children, watching, waiting, and when one lagged, perhaps to fix a wrapper or pick up a toy, Erimma struck. A hand over the mouth, a swift pull into the thick bush. Silence. The other children never noticed. They reached their homes, unaware that one of their playmates was missing. By the time parents began to wonder, by the time worry grew, it was already too late. Far from the village, hidden deep in a forest clearing where no sunlight reached, Erimma had built a hut. Twisted trees formed a circle around it, their branches blotting out the sky. This was where her smiling mask dropped completely, where her secret was hidden. The first child was Adadora, a bright little girl of 7, who stayed behind one night to help Erimma pack the mats. Instead of walking her home, Erimma led her down a lonely path. And there, under the choking trees, she performed her dark work. The child's life was taken in a ritual, whispered in a language no villager knew. What should have been innocence became something else, transformed into oil that gleamed golden in the moonlight, and a secret ingredient that flavored her cooking with irresistible sweetness. The next morning, Erimma returned with calabashes of what looked like freshly made palm oil. She sold them as she always did. No one suspected anything. People praised the purity of her oil, the fragrance of her food. Not one person imagined that the secret of her success was darker than the forest itself. 3 weeks later, her second victim was Emeka, a strong 9-year-old known for wrestling boys twice his age. He too followed Erimma when she promised to show him where the sweetest palm fruits grew. That night, the village lost another child, and Erimma's fame grew. Her food tasted richer, her oil sold faster, and her wealth multiplied. Nobody suspected her. Nobody imagined that the woman they loved most was hiding a hunger that had nothing to do with food. The third child was a girl named Obioma, 6 years old, and the youngest daughter of the village blacksmith. Quiet by nature, she rarely spoke during the moonlight gatherings, but her wide eyes never missed a detail. She had a habit of humming softly to herself, melodies that seemed to rise from some deep, innocent place within her. When Erimma took Obioma, the child did not cry or fight as the others had. Instead, she fixed her large, sorrowful eyes on Erimma and whispered, "Mama Erimma, why are you doing this?" For the briefest moment, the question pierced through Erimma's hardened heart, but greed and the hunger for power had already buried her humanity. She silenced the doubt and performed the same dark ritual as before. Obioma's small voice and haunting gaze lingered in her mind, but the blood flowed, the calabashes filled, and the chant in the strange, forbidden tongue continued. For months, this pattern remained unchanged. By day and evening, Erimma led the moonlight play, her laughter ringing sweetly through the night air, her stories making the children cling to her every word. Parents trusted her, never doubting the woman who watched their sons and daughters as if they were her own. But when the stars dimmed and the children returned home, Erimma became the predator in their midst. She preyed on those who lagged behind, turning their innocence into her secret trade of oil and soup that no one could resist. The village began to notice that children were disappearing. Families whispered. Some prayed. Some wept quietly. But no one suspected Erimma. She was loved too deeply, admired too widely. And when she joined the search parties, wailing and comforting parents, who could believe that the most trusted woman among them was the very cause of their grief? But the night that changed everything came during the rainy season, when clouds smothered the moon and only a handful of children gathered for the play. Among them was a boy Erimma had never seen before. His name was Chijioke. He looked about 10 years old, his skin darker than the other children, his eyes carrying a depth that unsettled her. While the others laughed, sang, and gasped at her stories, Chijioke simply watched. He never smiled, never reacted, never looked away. When the gathering ended, Chijioke did not hurry home with the rest. He lingered, standing in the square as though he belonged to neither the children nor the night. Erimma, hungry and desperate, noticed him immediately. Her oil was running low, her soup had begun to lose its irresistible taste, and her customers were growing restless. She could not wait much longer. She approached him with her gentle smile, the same one that had won the trust of every child before him. "Young man, where do you live? I will walk you home to make sure you are safe." But even as she spoke, her mind was already weaving a different plan to lead him, as always, into the darkness of her clearing. Chijioke looked directly into her eyes, his calm, unsettling. "I know where I am going," he said softly. His voice was steady, far older than his years. Erimma ignored the warning hidden in his words. She turned toward the forest path, certain he would follow, like all the others. But when she glanced back, she found him walking beside her, not trailing timidly behind. His stride was steady, purposeful, as if he already knew where they were going and why. In the clearing, she tied him to the post, as she had done with every victim before. Yet Chijioke did not struggle. He did not cry. He did not plead. He only stood still, bound but undefeated, his eyes never leaving hers. "Are you not afraid?" Erimma asked, her hands trembling despite herself. Chijioke's gaze pierced her. "Should I be afraid of someone who is already dead?" A chill ran through her, but she forced her fear down. She needed this ritual. She needed the oil, the meat, the power. Her knife rose, her chant began, and as the blood flowed, she realized something was terribly different. The oil in the calabashes did not glow golden as before it turned dark, almost black. The flesh she prepared later carried a smell unlike any she had known, a scent of graves and curses heavy enough to choke her. By dawn, strange things began to stir in Ajani. The stream that had always run clear now flowed red as blood. Villagers who fetched water fled in terror. And then came the apparitions, the walking dead, silent and cold, moving through the streets in broad daylight. Ajani had never known fear like this. And though the villagers could not yet see the link, Erimma's heart knew. Chijioke was no ordinary child. The mystery of the missing children, whispered about for months, suddenly became a living terror. Parents who once comforted themselves with the hope that their sons and daughters had wandered to another village now faced the truth. Something darker was at work. The walking dead roaming the streets could only mean that the children's fate was far worse than anyone dared imagine. By midday, Ajani itself seemed cursed. Dogs howled without pause. Even under the blazing Sunday birds dropped from the sky mid-flight, their lifeless bodies littering the ground. Fields that had been green and thriving the day before withered in hours, their leaves turning brown before villagers' eyes. The air itself grew heavy, carrying a dread that pressed on every chest and made people rush home, bolting their doors early. Erimma watched it all unfold, her stomach twisting with unease. She remembered Chijioke's calm words, his strange gaze, and a thought struck her like a hammer blow. Had she killed something more than a child? The calabashes of oil made from his blood sat untouched, their contents dark and unsettling. The meat she had prepared from his body filled her pots, but the smell of it sickened even her. Still, villagers came, as they always did, trusting the woman they admired. They lined up at her stall, eager for her soup and oil. Erimma's hands shook as she scooped and measured, her smile faltering, but no one noticed. To them, she was still Mama Erimma, the woman who cared for their children during moonlight play. The Igwe, desperate for answers, sent word to a neighboring town for the chief priest, a man famed for his power to speak with the unseen. 3 days later he arrived, an old figure with hair as white as ash and eyes that seemed to pierce the veil between worlds. Robes marked with sacred signs hung from his shoulders, and in his hand he carried a staff crowned with carved spirits. That evening the entire village gathered in the square. Men, women, and children filled every space, their eyes fixed on the priest as he laid kola nuts and cowries on a mat. He studied the patterns with grave intensity, then poured palm wine upon the earth, calling on the ancestors to reveal the truth. After an hour of chants and sacred gestures, the priest rose to his feet. His voice rang clear, reaching every ear. People of Ajani, a great evil has been done among you. The blood of a god has been spilled, and the spirits are furious. What you see walking your streets are signs the wall between the living and the dead has been torn open. A murmur of fear swept the crowd. The blood of a god? No one understood. Surely there were no gods living among them. The priest lifted his staff. To mend the rift, a sacrifice must be made. Tomorrow night, under the full moon, bring a white goat, a white chicken, and palm wine to the sacred grove. There, I will seal the breach. Relief washed over Erimma. The priest had not named her. No finger was pointed in her direction. She blended with the crowd, nodding gravely like the others, her secret still safe. The sacrifice was offered the next night. The whole village came, bearing the animals and wine, their voices joining in chants as smoke from burning herbs filled the grove. The priest danced, poured libations, and called upon the ancestors. When it ended, the stream ran clear again, and the dead were no longer seen. The people rejoiced, believing the danger had passed. But peace lasted only 7 days. When the curse returned, it came fiercer than before, and this time, its weight fell squarely on Erimma. It was market day, and her stall was as crowded as ever. Villagers pressed in with containers, eager to buy her oil after days of shortage. Erimma moved among them, ladling, measuring, pretending calm. But when her eyes strayed toward the waiting area, her breath caught. On the small stool she kept for the elders sat a boy. At first, she thought little of it. Perhaps he belonged to a customer. But then she looked closer, and the calabash nearly slipped from her trembling hands. It was Chijioke. He wore the same clothes as the night she killed him. His face was pale, his eyes fixed on hers, and blood dripped steadily from his mouth, trailing down his chin to soak his shirt. Erimma's blood turned cold. Erimma dropped the calabash in her hands, oil splattering across the ground. Her finger trembled as she pointed at the stool, her voice breaking into a scream. He is there. The boy is there. Look, he is looking at me. Startled, the crowd turned, but the stool was empty. No boy, no blood, nothing. Erimma, what is wrong with you? One woman asked, frowning. There is nobody there. Are you ill? But Erimma could still see him. Chijioke sat in silence, his eyes locked on hers. Blood ran from his mouth in a steady stream, staining his shirt crimson. And though his lips did not move, his voice echoed inside her skull. You spilled the blood of a god. Now you will pay. Her scream cut through the market. Abandoning her stall, she fled, running past shocked customers, and through the village streets, without once looking back. She did not stop at her house. She did not stop at the edge of the settlement. Fear drove her legs, but dread clung to her like a shadow. Behind her, confusion rippled through the market. Then, horror. A woman opened her calabash of oil. Inside was thick, dark blood. Another lifted the lid of her soup pot and recoiled. Floating within were what looked unmistakably like human remains. Panic spread like wildfire. Those who had bought from Erimma in the past rushed home, checking their supplies. All found the same abomination. Oil turned to blood, soup turned to flesh. The truth could no longer hide. Erimma's secret was revealed. In her house, she grabbed what she could: beads, coins, gold ornaments, the wealth she had gathered from her evil trade. She thought of fleeing to another land, another village where no one knew her name. But her heart hammered with the feeling that eyes were following her, pressing her deeper into dread. She ran to the forest clearing, the place where her rituals had stained the earth. There, she pulled treasures from the ground, where she had buried them. But before she could escape, she felt it, a gaze. Slowly, she turned. At the edge of the clearing stood Chijioke, and behind him, all the children she had murdered. Edadora, wrapped in the same white cloth she had worn the night she died. Emeka, arms folded, his young face cold with judgment. Obioma, humming her soft tune, now a song of mourning. And others, the forgotten ones, stood silently, their eyes hollow but clear. Erimma dropped her treasures, her knees giving way. She wept. "Please, I am sorry. I did not mean to hurt you. I was hungry. I needed money. I had no choice." Chijioke stepped forward, his presence heavy with the power of the spirit world. His voice rolled like thunder, calm but unyielding. "You had many choices, Erimma. You chose evil every time. You betrayed parents who trusted you. You killed children who called you mother. You fed their flesh to those who loved you. Your greed became your god." She sobbed. "What do you want from me?" "You will return to the village," Chijioke commanded. "You will confess. You will reveal the truth of what you have done, and you will face the judgment of those you betrayed." Erimma tried to resist, to run, to scream, but her body no longer belonged to her. An unseen power forced her to stand, her legs moving without her will. Chijioke had bound her spirit, and now he led her back. At the Igwe's palace, the villagers were already gathering. Search parties were forming, weapons in hand. Machetes, clubs, and torches glimmered as faces twisted with grief and fury. Parents who had trusted her now seethed with rage. Men and women who had eaten her food felt sick at the memory. The betrayal was deeper than blood. And into their midst, Erimma walked. Not of her own accord, but dragged forward by the power of the godchild she had slain. The villagers were still planning their search when a murmur spread through the palace gates. Heads turned, and silence fell. Erimma was walking into the compound, slowly, stiffly. Her eyes stared wide and blank, her steps clumsy, as if unseen hands dragged her forward. She looked less like a woman and more like a corpse being forced to walk. Some villagers raised their weapons, ready to strike, but her appearance stilled them. She seemed already broken, a puppet of invisible strings. At the center of the compound, before the Igwe's throne, her legs buckled. She fell to the ground and began to speak in a hollow voice that carried across the silent crowd. "I killed them," she whispered. "I killed the children. I used their blood to make oil and their flesh to make soup. That is why people came from other villages to buy from me." Gasps rippled like thunder. Parents clutched one another. Even those who had suspected felt the horror double as her words confirmed the truth. "How many?" the Igwe demanded, his voice heavy with rage and grief. 15, Erimma answered, her tone still distant, as though dragged from her soul. 15 children in 2 years. I took them during moonlight play, when they trusted me." Cries filled the air. Mothers wailed. Fathers covered their faces in shame and fury. Their worst fears had been given flesh. "The clothes," she went on, unable to stop herself. "In my house, a wooden box beneath my bed, You will find them there." Men rushed out immediately. The rest stood frozen, glaring at the woman who had once been their pride, now revealed as their curse. "Why?" a grieving mother sobbed. "Why do this to our children?" For the first time, Erimma's old voice flickered through. "I was poor," she murmured. "The rituals gave me wealth, made me respected." "You were already respected," a villager roared. "People loved you, and you destroyed it with your own hands." Erimma bowed her head. There was no defense left. The men returned, carrying the wooden box. When opened, it spilled tiny wrappers, shirts, beads, belongings, every parent recognized. At that sight, grief broke like a flood. Women collapsed. Men sobbed. Even the Igwe wept. "What shall we do with her?" he asked. Voices erupted. "Stone her, burn her, end her now." The fury was so fierce, it seemed the crowd itself might tear her apart. But one elder raised his hand. "Let her go back to her house. Let her live with what she has done. The spirits of the children will decide her fate." The crowd quieted. It was a crueler justice. Death was quick. Torment was not. Erimma was ordered to return. She walked through the same streets where once she had been praised, now met with hatred and disgust. Children hid, neighbors spat. She entered her house and closed the door. For hours, there was silence. Then, at last, men forced the door open. What they found sent them fleeing. Erimma hung from the rafters, lifeless. But worse still were the spirits. The children stood around her body, their forms pale but unmistakable. Adaora, Emeka, Obioma, and the others. They said nothing. They only stared, their presence colder than the grave. The house was sealed and abandoned. No one dared enter again. Over time, it rotted into ruin. But villagers swore that on nights when the moon was full, they could still hear children's voices singing from within. Ajani never forgot. Parents grew cautious, never again leaving children unsupervised. The story spread to neighboring villages, told as a warning that evil can wear the most trusted face. The clearing where she killed remained barren, cursed by blood. Nothing grew there, and travelers whispered of strange sounds when they passed. But Chijioke, the godchild who had exposed her, did not leave. People said he lingered, watching over children during moonlight play, ensuring no harm touched them again. And so ended the tale of Erimma, the woman who cooked children. A story etched into memory, retold through generations as a warning that even love, trust, and admiration can be betrayed when greed and evil take root in the heart. And so, dear viewers, we have come to the end of Erimma's tale, the woman who cooked children. Her story is a warning that evil does not always come with horns or claws. Sometimes it smiles, sometimes it comforts, sometimes it hides behind the face we trust the most. If this story held you, let it not end here. Tap the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next tale. For those who have already subscribed, thank you, truly. Your support keeps these stories alive. And if the chills of Erimma's deeds or the lesson behind them struck you, leave a comment and press like. It helps the story travel further, carried by the algorithm, so more people can hear the warning. Because sometimes, one story told at the right moment can protect someone from the sharpest evil hiding behind the sweetest smile.